there be?
I'm in between Georgia and Times New Roman, so I can't be.
Definitely Times New
Probably Georgia.
Will there be a lot of ABC?
I like the numbers on Georgia. I like how the formatting for that.
Like the first 5 letters of the alphabet, or more of like lines?
I'm in favor of all letters.
In other words, read.
Do you remember feeling one passage more difficult than the other?
Yes.
Yeah, but then I heard that I misunderstood the second one, so I don't know.
I don't know.
The second one that deals with the given, the part, because folks that he's talking about, Christian church and all these miracles happening and not happening. His argument is that if they were happening, more scholars, scientists, philosophers of the day would have reported it and made note of it. So if a lot of your answers were along the lines of, and this is why those miracles did happen, you probably misinterpreted the passage. If your answers were more of, and that's why these did not happen, then you probably were okay with it. Which, and not to sound stupid or insulting to anyone, the better you understand the passage, the better the chance of you obviously getting the questions right. Now, depending upon the complexity of the passage, some people would argue the syntax, the word choice, the vocabulary, easier said than done. For SATs, PSATs, sometimes folks will skim documents and then really focus on the questions. I think for AP exam, you really have to take your time with the passage. And if you understand the passage, and again, easier said than done, but if you do understand it, you'll answer the questions at a much quicker pace than going back, looking over. Some passages, it's not going to matter what you do, you're going to feel like, I don't get this. Two separate ones. On your AP exam, they break up the passages into 2 categories, 20th and 21st century prose, nonfiction. Prose means it's not poetry. And then the other category is pre-20th century prose, so 1800s, 19th century, and older. Both of these are older, so they're pre-20th century, so they would not be showing up on the same because only one passage comes from before the 20th century. That doesn't mean that it's automatically the harder one, but I think those are the passages that people tend to be more fearful of because language is a little bit more complex. The writing style just seems a little bit different and not the normal stuff that we have. So you having 2 passages like this on the AP exam wouldn't happen unless they completely change the stuff. Also, that would show up on an AP exam. Not everything's going to be literature-based or like English-based. You could have things about the history of trains. There have been passages about clouds. There have been passages about the way that fish swim. There was passage about the natural history of the plastic pink flamingo. So it could be a whole host of things could be taking place. Doesn't mean it's going to be dealing with, hey, there's more plastic pink flamingos than there are flamingos, kind of redundant anyway, because flamingos are pink.
Not all flamingos at all. Because they're only pink if they eat shrimp.
So for this passage, what I would always recommend doing is marking up the passage as you read each paragraph, like what's the main idea, bless you, just to kind of give you some insight as to what's going on. The more you interact with it, I think the better chance of you trying to remember it. One thing on the AP exam to understand, as you turn the page, they'll have the passage again, which is nice, so you're not doing the whole page flip, but all the beautiful notes that Emma takes on the first passage, if you wanted to look at those notes, you would have to flip back and take a look at them again. Our average, the non-scaled score, our average was a 14 out of 24. Which, like say in physics, you go, the average was a 14 out of 24, all the heads go down and say, this is terrible. Remember, that's over 50%, that's passing, that's a 3 on the AP exam. So that's not a bad score to be at if it was a 14. That would show up in the grade book as being like a 19 probably out of 24. So what's happening in this passage by John Donne? If we were to say main concept, main topic, what would we put?
Fear.
Fear. Yeah.
Scared.
Let's try again.
I'm not afraid.
Yay! So if you understand that we're dealing with fear, that certainly helps things. Kind of looks like Fia with a check mark, but we'll pretend it's fear. Now, certainly there's going to be some aspects that are going to make it a little bit more complex than others, but if you were going, oh, I didn't realize we were reading about fear, that would certainly put you behind the 8 ball right away. All right. Number 1, passage contains all the following rhetorical devices except. Important word certainly is going to be except, because you want to locate the one that is not there. I mentioned to you, you always want to look to try to find the right answer in the passage. You can't find the right answer because it's not going to be used, but you certainly could find examples of the other ones that would be in there. What are we thinking for number 1? You said D. D is apostrophic speech. You remember what apostrophic speech is?
Talking to someone who is
So we mentioned apostrophic speech when we were talking about Holden, because Holden does apostrophic speech with Allie, or if you were to say a prayer, you know, do a deity, deity presumably is not there. So we'd be saying there is not any speaking to an absent person in this passage. That would be correct. The answer is D. So what that would mean would be, if you look through the passage, you should be able to find examples of paradox, repetition, contrast, parallel syntax. Any places that you remember seeing those things in general?
Yeah, that second block, I guess, paragraph.
Starting line 11?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of like the fears this, the fears that, then also something else.
So you're putting that one as being, I'm guessing which one, but
Yeah, it was like both parallel and paradox.
okay. So parallel, paradox. Like you would be, you're not afraid of a lion, but you're afraid of a cat, kind of thing. Like that doesn't seem, that's kind of a paradox taking place. Also, if you are comparing, you're looking at how one person could be afraid not of starving, but you're afraid of a piece of meat that would be on the table. You're looking at 2 different entities. You're not comparing them necessarily, but you are contrasting them. And you do have a lot of reference to fear coming up over and over again with the repetition. And if you take a look, you have parallel syntax and you have repetition. Those really are pretty much the same thing. And you take a look at paradox and contrast. If you can locate paradox, then there's a pretty good chance you're also going to have contrast. So you could kind of eliminate them in that way, but certainly being able to locate them would solidify this is the correct answer. And yeah, we don't have apostrophic speech anywhere within the course of the text. So D, 1 for 1. And Nina answered. She stepped up. The rest of you just sat there looking down at the floor. Please, please don't call on me. Zach wants to do number 2 though.
Well, I don't even know what I answered for this one because I only marked off B and D.
As in like crossing them off?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I don't remember what the actual answer I chose was.
You said B and was D?
D.
Well, the good news is it's not B or D.
Well, that's why I marked.
Some of you are going, oh, crap.
Yeah, I don't know what I chose.
What do we know about fear based on the passage?
Oh wait, okay. I was really in between B and C for this one, and I
Okay.
think I went with A, but I don't know.
One of those 2 is the correct one as well. So 50-50 chance here that we got going. Knowing A or C. Anyone have any strong opinions one way or the other?
I should say.
Why? And again, I'm more worried about rationale as opposed to.
It only talks about belief like one.
It only talked about.
Belief. I'm reading the wrong one. It. I don't remember what I was gonna say. Never mind.
It's okay.
I mean, like, I don't think it's C because, like, while it mentions weakness at one point in the passage, it never, like, explicitly says anything about how the weaker you are, the more fears you have.
Very vague question, so I apologize ahead of time. What does C imply? That it arises in people who have more weaknesses than most? Like, what would kind of be the opposite of C? Right.
The strong people.
Okay. So those who lack weaknesses or those who are strong do not fear. According to the passage, who fears?
Everyone.
Everyone. So it doesn't matter who you are, fear is going to be some kind of aspect of your life, whether you're educated, uneducated, whether you're military, non-military, whatever the case may be, everyone would fear. Which, you take a look at, freedom from fear is fully realizable only in the afterlife. Focus here on afterlife. The only way I can get out of fear is to not be present on earth. If you take a look towards the end of the passage, you kind of get the idea now as to where, really, I guess the bottom of the first column going into the second. As then every cold air is not a damp, every shivering is not a stupefaction, so every fear is not a fearfulness, every declination is not a running away, every debating is not a resolving, a lot of parallel structure going on. Every wish that it were not thus is not a murmuring, not a dejection, though it be thus. But as my physician peer puts not him from his practice, neither doth mine put me from receiving from God and man and myself spiritual, civil, and moral assistance and consolations. Even though I fear, that doesn't keep me from the afterlife. And when I get into the afterlife, that is when my fears will subside and kind of go away. So really, one of the main fears that gets looked at here, analyzed, is doubt. And just because someone has doubt doesn't mean, therefore, your life will be miserable, on earth or in afterlife solely. You have the chance to get away, but that's only going to be in the afterlife. 2 makes more sense, I think, if you recognize the idea that Grant is fearful, Nina is fearful, Jesse is fearful, everyone is fearful no matter what. Number 3, second sentence. Sometimes people kind of get thrown off with this one because I don't think they're counting their sentences. So we're taking a look at, I overtake him, I overrun him in his fear, and I go the faster because he makes his pace slow. So overtake, overrun, faster, pace, those would be words that would be synonymous with a foot race.
I looked at the answer and I was like, hey, that could be A, and then I got down to C, and I was like, C makes more sense.
I've had people struggle on this one because they don't see the period after him. And so they go with, I fear the more because he disguises his fear. And they're like, is that happening in a courtroom where you would be disguising your fear? So double check the sentences. Poor kid the 1 year, before we got to the question. So, Mr. Kane, I just have a question before we get started. What's a food trace? At which point everyone had that reaction. And then the kid in Zach's seat, I think she said an embassy, looked at her and said, are you serious?
Oh, when was this?
It's when you trace an outline.
Oh boy, that was probably maybe 8 years ago or so.
But only him. No other reason.
No, didn't have them.
Didn't have shame.
Number 4, it is most likely that the physician makes his pace slow from that previous line. So here we're doing a little bit of inferencing. Why would the physician be making his pace slow as he's taking a look at the patient?
I said E.
You're going E,
And
okay?
I said ugh.
I said N. Which is E.
Is it wrong?
But a different one.
You're worried because I didn't put it in highlighter. I only did the dot.
No, you
Yeah.
just like staring at it,
Yeah.
so it seemed like you had to consider it, whereas if it were the answer, you would already have considered.
Well, no, we have to consider all of them.
I think it's A.
No, I think it's E.
You're going
I
A?
think I got it right.
No, A.
Oh,
E.
eh.
We're just saying E in
We're
different
doing the
ways.
phonetics now.
So
Does that make you feel better?
Yeah.
Does that make you feel worse? Oh, it's A. It's E.
I knew it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what is
Yeah,
the
it's
concern?
definitely not D.
What is the concern of the physician?
He may not recover.
Yeah.
So, I might not know what's wrong. The prescription or the medicine that's going to be offered may not work, which this is all going to play off number 5. The speaker's physician is concerned that the patient's fear, not his fear, but the patient's fear may do what?
Weaken the efficiency of the treatment.
I forget if it's
Oops. And the efficacy of it basically is going to be the effectiveness of it. If the patient's afraid, therefore this is not going to work, and the patient is still going to suffer. So we got 4E, 5B. He knows that his fear shall not disorder the practice and exercise of his art, but he knows that my fear may disorder the effect and working of his practice. So this disorder the effect and working of his practice is what would best line up with our answer choice of weaken the efficacy of the treatment. All right. Number 6, the comparison on lines 11 to 17. There's a lot of stuff taking a look in this area. With the spleen and wind in the body suggests that fear is all of the following. Again, we got that highlighter word of accept. So we take a look at 11. As the ill affections of the spleen complicate and mingle themselves with every infirmity of the body, so doth fear insinuate itself in every action or passion of the mind. And as the wind in the body will counterfeit any disease, and seem the stone, and seem the gout, so fear will counterfeit any disease of the mind. So just looking at that passage, those lines, which one of these would you say is definitely happening, or which ones are definitely happening within those lines? Like, which ones can we say, yes, it does this?
It's deceptive.
Okay.
I think I messed up by not reading the accept on this.
Which does, and I don't say this to be mean, it's in all caps,
Yeah.
but it still will slip by people. I think because sometimes we're in such in a hurry of rush mode. And, some of you took the whole 40 minutes to do the 24 questions. That's fine. It's not, you're being judged on, you should be done in 25 minutes because it's only 24 questions. At this point in the year, people are so worried about time, it won't be a factor. It won't be an issue by the time May rolls around because we'll just be so used to the types of questions. We'll be so used to ways to locate the answers that it'll kind of be second nature. Right now, I don't want to say it's all brand new, but you're still, basically floaties on in the deep end of the pool, trying to tread water. You'll become much more comfortable with what's going to be happening, and know that, wait, there's some questions here they're going to ask accept. I need to keep an eye out for them. So we know it's deceptive. What else is it? And some you could probably even play off of. If I know it's perceptive or deceptive, I also know it's this. It is persuasive. Fear, and this also kind of happens with illnesses. What are they going to do? They are going to injure. If something is deceptive, if it is persuasive, it can shift, it can change, it can manipulate. It also could be described as being dynamic. What it is not, according to this passage, is congenital. What is congenital? Anyone know? All right, good thing. We could know it's not the others because we're able to eliminate them. Congenital basically would be like hereditary, that it is passed down. Now, it is present in all people, but it's not that you solely get fear because a parent had fear. It's something that is there, but it's not a passed down thing that would be happening. Congenital wouldn't mean like innate or anything like that.
I knew the definition of that.
And, I mean, there will be words that you don't know. As we read more, it's not that every word's going to be unlocked in the vocabulary, but as you read more, you get more comfortable with it. Sometimes, and this happened on the second passage, the very first question was asking a definition for supine, where some folks go, I don't know what that means. There's going to be some questions that you just don't know. But that's where you can't be that, I only got 9 out of 10, I only got 8 out of 10. You just move on to the next question, knowing that you will probably get some wrong. But when you have questions like the foot race one, that you can get, you want to make sure those are the ones that you take care of business. If you're missing, the simpler ones or the less complex ones, that really makes things much more difficult. Lines 19 to 22, the speaker suggests that unauthentic valor is motivated by. This one tends to be tricky. misguided altruism, self-destructive ambition, self-conscious insecurity, financial considerations, or hypocritical tendencies. So notice the questions for the most part go in chronological order, so we're following where we just were. It shall seem valor in despising and undervaluing danger, and it is but fear in an overvaluing of opinion and estimation, and I would say the key phrase, and a fear of losing that. If you have a fear of losing that, which one of those answer choices for number 7 would best match up with you have a fear of losing something? Self-conscious insecurity.
I think that's the right choice. I'm pretty sure that's the right choice.
Maybe.
Right when we read it,
Any questions about an incorrect answer? Because there can absolutely be questions where, well, why isn't it this one? You know, it's one thing to say, can you see why the answer is C? It's another thing if you have some questions where, and I think a future one might be one of these, where, but I still don't understand why it wouldn't be one of these other options. So if that becomes an issue, by all means, let us know. Number 8, the sentence beginning, a man that's not afraid of a lion supports the speaker's proposition that fear, and this would kind of play off some stuff that we were doing down here with number 6. Look at that highlighter. Looks good.
I like it.
Heath, you know what you put for number 8?
I'm gonna put C.
Think you put C? You still feel good about C?
Kind of more than the other answers, yeah.
Okay. So you're feeling better than like 50%.
I agree.
Megan's not making eye contact with you. That means she disagrees with you and you're wrong.
No, I
She
agree.
Okay, she agrees. Jesse agrees. I don't know if that makes anyone feel better, but yeah. It's unpredictable, not bound by logic. Because if you were afraid of a lion, you would expect that you would also be afraid of a cat. But why would I be afraid? Why would I not be afraid of a lion and be afraid of little Muffin?
Because
So
fear is
Paul.
unpredictable and not bound by law.
There you go. I think number 9 is the one that people dislike the most.
What the heck was number 9?
I think number 9 is the one that Jesse dislikes the most. One could at least partially
angry.
rebut or rebut, so like a rebuttal, counter argument. One could partially counter argue the implication of lines 22 to 30 by noting that a man who is afraid of some joint of meat at the table might, and then you got to take a look at these. Couple things about it. This is a unique question. This is not a type of question that normally would show up where, like, even the phrase partially rebut, is pretty weak, where Emma could kind of say this, and you might be able to understand why. There's certainly questions where there would be inferences, where you'd have to have evidence from the passage to best support. I think of those types of questions, this is probably the weakest, but it still shows up, and it still counts. And that does not happen with this question, but it does happen on some tests. If after an AP exam, they decide that a question is invalid because it's not properly supported by the passage, there are 2 answers that could be deemed correct. They will take that question away. So you had 55 questions, they'll only score 54 or something like that. So there have been instances where they go, you know what, this wasn't a good question. This is not, though, one of those.
It should be. It's a terrible question.
What'd you put?
I put D, but I had no
It's
idea.
either B or D.
It was a blind guess.
Okay.
B.
You said B or D?
B or D. Those were the
And
two
then-
I was
I said B.
You said B?
Because I know without a doubt it's not A or C. So that leaves B, D, or E. I don't think it's E, but I'm pretty sure it's B.
What's going, so within the passage, there we go. Not afraid of starving, so you're not afraid of being without food, yet is afraid of some piece of meat that's going to be at the table. Why would a person be fearful of food? Okay, dislike it. The host's intention could be not that they want to serve me food that I dislike on purpose, but they could be trying to add something to the food or serve me raw chicken so I get salmonella poisoning and ultimately end up dying. So you could have this thing kind of going on. So we can kind of come up with some options for it. Heath, I'm guessing this was your reason for saying not like the food,
Yeah.
lack of interest. It is B or D. It's not A.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I think it's
If we justifiably suspect the host's intentions so far as the poisoning, what's happening to us? Like, if the host is trying to poison me, what's happening to me? What will happen if I'm poisoned? I will get at least very ill with the potential that I could become sick. Okay? But certainly maybe die. What's the whole passage about? Not about dying. It's about our fear. Which is going to be a more substantial fear? Fear of illness and death, or fear of giving me tuna casserole and I don't like tuna casserole? The one that better aligns itself with fear is going to be D, because there's the fear of the host's intentions that maybe he or she could try to poison me. You can make a case for B, where why would I want the food if I don't have an interest in it? But that whole idea of fear doesn't really resonate with B the way it would resonate with D.
Well, also, now that I'm reading B back, it's saying interest in food in general, and it's not specifying that need. So it's saying that person's just lacks interest in food in general.
As opposed to the tuna casserole or leg of lamb that you don't want to have or something like that. Yeah, that would be a good point. Because this is too generic of an answer. But D at least allows itself to deal with fear, where the other ones don't really have that with it. I don't know what some tests I have percentages, like what percentage of people got this question right, wrong. I don't have that for this one. My guess is this is probably maybe a 30% question, maybe even a 20-some% question where people would struggle. My guess is 9 and 2 were probably the two most commonly missed questions on this passage. Not by you folks, but when the AP exam was taken. And 2 being the one like when can you fear won't cause harm after you have died. Number 10. I remember as a student not liking these questions. As a teacher, these are the ones that you want to nail, that you want to get correct, because it doesn't really require you to understand the passage. It's self-contained. It's just kind of following along with grammar. I think where I did not like it as a student, it might have been a case of that paralysis by analysis. You read too much into it, and it can't be this obvious. But generally, those are the ones that you want to take care of business on, because they're self-contained within the passage itself. You're not taking a look at understanding. So we know we're taking a look at the word they, which I think is in line 26. Yes. Which they seek to drown. So I got to go back to the beginning of the sentence. A man is not afraid of a lion, is afraid of a cat, not afraid of starving, and yet is afraid of some joint of meat at the table, presented to feed him, not afraid of the sound of drums and trumpets and shot, and those which they seek to drown, the last cries of men, and is afraid of some particular harmonious instrument, so much afraid as that which any of these the enemy might drive this man, otherwise valiant enough, out of the field. More often than not, 90% of the time, the pronoun comes before or after what it's referencing. After. So I want to take a look at what's coming before. I don't want to confuse myself and take a look at the answers. I want to try to figure this out on my own, because whatever I come up with, if I then look at my answers and it's there, I feel good. If what I come up with is not there, then I have to take a look at it a little bit more. And those which they seek to drown. So what in the sentence earlier could be drowning or causing something to drown?
The sound, the loud drums.
So not I can't swim drown, but you're going the drums, the trumpet, and the shot would be drowning out the last cries of men. So you're saying they is going back to drums, trumpets, and shot. And if I take a look, drums and trumpets and shot, lines 25 to 26. I feel good about that one. Once you got an answer in your gut, you run with it no matter what. That's correct. It's A. What throws off some folks is it's not like a person or a group, like the enemy or whatnot. And really, you only got these two options here with A and B, so far as things that are within the same line as they. For the most part, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be these ones since they're definitely coming after. 11, a more conventional but still accurate replacement for nor in line 31 would be, this is plug and play. And, yep. And then 12. What's the concomitant?
They go together.
They go together. They go hand in hand. They kind of complement one another. So worsening illness and approaching death are usually concomitants. This would be true.
Which passage are you gonna go over in